Today we're going to talk about patterns of inheritance, and the goal of this video is to explain 6 different ways a trait can be inherited. So the first pattern is called complete dominance, and this is the one that we've been looking at in previous videos. This would be traits that are controlled by one gene that had 2 possible alleles, and one allele is completely dominant over the other. And again, that type of pattern is called complete dominance. The dominant allele completely masks the trait associated with the recessive allele in the heterozygote. So I've given you an example in this picture, pea plants. In pea plants, the allele for the purple flower color, the big P, is completely dominant. So it masks the allele for the white flower color, which is a little p, in the heterozygote. And you can see this. Look at the 2 heterozygotes. Here's big P, little p. Here's big P, little p. Notice their color is purple. Even though they have the allele for white flower color, that allele is masked by the allele for purple flower color. So that's why these 2 heterozygotes appear purple. Okay, the second pattern of inheritance is called codominance. And in codominance, both alleles are dominant. So both phenotypes are expressed in the heterozygote. And you can see codominance in a certain type of cattle called roan cattle. In roan cattle, red hair is dominant. It's the dominant trait. And white hair is a dominant trait. Cows with both red, the red allele, a big R, and the white allele, a big W, have patches of red and white hair. So you can see a real cow here that has patches of red and white hair. And you can see what would happen if you took 2 cows that had these patches of red and white hair. They would be they would be like the heterozygote. They would have one of the dominant alleles, big R, and another dominant allele, big W. If you fill in the Punnett square, one of their possible offspring will be fully red because that offspring would receive 2 R's. One of their possible offspring would be fully white because that offspring received 2 W's. But the heterozygotes, the ones that have one of each allele, a big R and a big W, they would have patches of red hair and patches of white hair. So red shows up and white shows up. That's why we call this codominant. Both of these traits, the red and the white, are dominant. That's why they both show up in the heterozygote. A third pattern of inheritance is called complete dominance. A third pattern of inheritance is called incomplete dominance. We already talked about complete dominance. And with incomplete dominance, the phenotype of a heterozygote has an intermediate phenotype of both parents. And when I say intermediate, I mean these 2 things have been blended into one new thing. So these 2 traits have been blended together to make this one new trait. And an example of this would be in a flower called snapdragons. So in snapdragons, the heterozygote has the allele for red flower color, which is a big R, and the allele for white flower color, which would be a big W. So notice the letters are similar to the example from codominance that we just saw in roan cattle. But unlike the roan cattle, the heterozygote doesn't have patches of red and patches of white. Instead, with incomplete dominance, those 2 colors blend together to make a new color, pink. When you mix red with white, you get pink. So the heterozygotes in this case, this flower and this flower, will be pink. That's an example of incomplete dominance. So an easy way to tell codominance and incomplete dominance apart is with codominance, you're not going to get like uh, a new trait. You'll see both traits from the parents expressed in the offspring. But with incomplete dominance, you do get this new trait that's a blended form of the traits of the parents. All right, a fourth pattern of inheritance is called sex-linked traits. And the phenotype in sex-linked traits is determined by alleles on the sex chromosomes. Now, so far I haven't told you about specifically sex chromosomes. Biological females have 2 sex chromosomes. They are both X chromosomes. Biological males have 2 sex chromosomes as well, but one of those is an X chromosome and the other is a Y chromosome. So color blindness is an example of a sex-linked trait. Now, it's going to behave just like a case of complete dominance that we saw on the first slide, but the alleles are found on the X chromosome, not the Y chromosome. And this is going to be important because it's going to affect whether males or females get the trait. So when we work out a Punnett square for a sex-linked trait, we have to write the X and the Y in the Punnett square. So you'll notice the Y does not have any additional letter on it because the allele for colorblindness is not on the Y chromosome. But the X's do have a letter on it because the allele for colorblindness is found, the alleles for colorblindness are found on the X chromosome. So if you have an X chromosome with a big B on it, that is the allele for normal vision. But if you have an X chromosome with a little b on it, that's the allele for colorblindness. So up here we have a female, a mother. She's XX. That's how we know that she's a female. And she is heterozygous for colorblindness because one of her X's has a big B and the other X has a little b. If you look at the male, the dad here, his X has a big B on it, so he has normal vision. Remember, I said colorblindness behaves just like a case of complete dominance. So this mother, even though she has the allele for colorblindness, that allele is recessive. It's going to be completely masked by the allele for normal vision. So the mother has normal vision and the father has normal vision. Now, if you fill in the Punnett square, this X with the big B and this X with the big B go here. This would be one of their possible offspring, a daughter, because the person is XX. This daughter would have normal vision. Fill in this Punnett square. This is a daughter because they too have XX. This daughter would have normal vision, but this daughter is a carrier for colorblindness because that daughter has a little b on one of their X chromosomes. So even though this daughter has normal vision, they carry the allele for colorblindness. Now look at the sons. We know these are the sons because they are XY. One of the sons gets a X with a big B. That X with a big B came from the mother here, and the Y came from the father. But look here, this son, the Y came from the father, but the X with a little b came from the mother. And so this son would be colorblind. So even though the mother and the father are not colorblind, in this case, they could produce a son, only a son, that is colorblind. They could not produce a daughter that is colorblind. Okay, so that's an example of a sex-linked trait. And in case you're wondering, I put this picture here of the number 12 because people that are colorblind, they would not be able to see the number 12 there. they would not be able to distinguish the red from the green, at least red-green colorblind. That's one type of colorblindness. People that are red-green colorblind wouldn't be able to see this 12. The colors look similar in their vision, so they wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, a fifth type of pattern of inheritance is called multiple alleles. And with multiple alleles, the trait is controlled by more than just two alleles. So every example you've seen so far, there's one big letter and there's one little letter, and that's it. Or there's just two letters. So with roan cattle and the snapdragons, we had R's and W's. There were still just two alleles, two letters. But with multiple alleles, there's going to be more than just two letters. And an example of this is blood type. Blood type is controlled by multiple alleles. There are 4 blood types. There's type A, type B, type AB, and type O. Type A and type B are both dominant alleles. So if you're looking at the phenotype here, type A blood, there's 2 ways to be type A. You could have 2 of these A alleles, or you could have just one of the A alleles. Now you might be wondering, why am I using I's? A capital I and a lowercase I. Well, that's because there is a recessive allele here. The little I is for type O. So type O is recessive, but both type A and type B are dominant blood types. So we use the capital I with a superscript on it, either A or B, to tell us which dominant allele we're working with here. And we use the little I to represent the recessive allele, which is for type O. Now, an individual could have both an A allele and a B allele, and in that case, they have type AB blood. Okay, so it might be helpful to see an example here. So that's what I'm going to work out on the next slide. Okay, so for example, suppose a mother has type B blood. So I've given her, and I said that she's heterozygous. So for her to have type B blood and be heterozygous, she would have one of the B alleles, and the other one would be the recessive allele. This is the allele for type O blood. So this is the mother's, the alleles in the mother's eggs. Now, let's say the father is type A. So we know he has an A allele, but he's heterozygous. So his other allele is going to be the recessive one, a little I. So if you create a Punnett square, the A allele and the B allele come together here. The A allele from the dad and the recessive allele from the mom come together here. The B allele from the mom and the recessive allele from the father, I, come together here. And then the 2 little I's come together here. Now it's important, these are the genotypes, what I've written in these boxes, but what about the phenotypes? Well, this offspring has type, the A allele and the B allele, and both of those are dominant. So this blood type of this individual would be type AB. The blood type of this individual, they only have an A allele, and it's dominant. The A allele is dominant over that allele for O, for type O blood. So this person would have just type A blood because A is dominant. This person would have type B blood because the B allele here is dominant. It covers up that other one, the recessive one. So this individual would be type B. But this individual, they have 2 little I's, so they don't have an A or B. Instead, they've got the 2 alleles for O, so they would be type O. So if you wanted to figure out the percentage chance that this couple has for producing offspring with these blood types, this couple has a 25% chance of producing an offspring with type AB blood because 1 out of the 4 boxes was type AB. They have a 25% chance of producing an individual with type A blood because 1 out of the 4 boxes was type A. They have a 25% chance of producing an offspring with type B blood because 1 of the boxes out of 4 was type B. And the same goes for type O. 1 of the 4 possibilities was type O, so that's a 25% chance. Okay, we'll finish here with polygenic traits. So with polygenic traits, the phenotype is determined by many genes. So in all the previous examples, we've been talking about alleles for just one gene. So there can be a variety of alleles for just one gene. But some of your traits are determined not just by one gene, but by many genes. And so these genes, they may or may not be on the same chromosomes. So in humans, we have a total of 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs of chromosomes. And with polygenic traits, genes from different chromosomes can work together to produce this trait. And examples of polygenic traits would be your skin color, your eye color, and your height. There's more than that, but those are just some of the examples. So in this video, we've reviewed 6 different types of inheritance, 6 different ways that traits can be inherited. We looked at complete dominance, codominance, incomplete dominance, sex-linked traits, multiple alleles, and polygenic traits.